Listeners, the loyal listeners and new listeners alike, of both groups are vanishingly small. The stars just don't want this episode to happen. But we have never cowed to circumstance, except for those times that we did, which were at least 3 times that I can think of off the top of my head, and did not put out an episode. And also a few times where I just wasn't feeling it, and I was like, well, I'll do it. I don't want to edit the episode today.
You told me your grandma died that one time.
Yeah, well, grandma can't die twice, so...
It depends on if it's one of our settings or not.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be the setting for tonight. We could describe what we have, and it's one where Chessman's grandma is an immortal being that cannot be slain.
Listeners, welcome to 30-Minute Worlds. We got about midway through an episode before technical difficulties presented themselves. We want to outline for you briefly what that episode was like as we continue talking about it.
Yeah, hold on. Let's do a dramatic recreation of the prompts reading.
No, they don't deserve that.
Yeah, I'm the Lord Lad, which means you guys have to think for me. Sorry, my Zach is a little rusty.
Mr. Zach Chessman, sir, I have a word for you.
Well, spit it out.
This robot, I'm sorry.
Just stop apologizing and spit it out, robot.
This robot.
Dan, what's your word?
The prompt of the hour is gutter.
Got it.
My prompt.
Hardly know her.
Tropical.
See, now you've already broken from form because we originally said it was
redefinition of the prompt that was selected.
We don't need to rehaggle this.
No, it's okay. We can take it from the top.
All right.
Welcome to 30-Minute World. Okay.
So from those words, we basically meandered our way through the concept of some sort of metropolis where gutters would make sense.
And robots created to be pirates as well was a concept.
Yeah, because we're talking about like sea shanty town, pirate pirate robots.
Yeah.
Pirate robots initially made by like a privateering private company force that then became just like a nuisance pirate threat to the oceans.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let me get in on the ground floor of where this was going to go, because I think that's about where we got.
The aesthetic for the listener thus far, unless the lore lad vetoes it, is ironclad pirates.
Yeah,
like ironclad ships. So
ironclad ships,
I didn't hear a veto on that, so we're good.
Last thing we're talking about is the power source of the robots, because we thought we could make it like a bit more of a low-tech setting if the robots were powered by some organism or gem or limited thing. And Dan said scarabs or beetles or something. Being like placed in the head plate and becoming, and I think that's super interesting because it means the robots are part bug. There's like bug consciousness being.
Could it be something like
very cool.
There is in this like tropical new world that has been colonized with these robotical types? This is an ancient practice, the creation of these automatons, and they like were served. They were made to serve the ancient kings, so they were buried with them.
I believe Chessman has an idea, and he's had it for a while.
That makes sense. That's good, because beetles they can reproduce, right? They're beetles. But
they're not going to be as talented as the original.
Yeah, they fuck
group.
They're not going to be as talented. But this was the entire like marketing decision for the modern pirates, is that they were making a group of privateers that would go out. They would take command of an enemy ship, and they could fully crew it, because then they could...
With just a few of them, yeah.
Well, no, they could make more, because you just had beetles in your hold that... and then you turn... I guess you rip some of it out, and you turn them into robots. But that was this whole thing of they could just be out there scavenging materials and... Yeah. Beetle fucking, I guess.
Well, that'd be cool, because it'd almost be like a kit you could buy that is like has 2 like host beetles in it that have consciousnesses, and like a breeding pair of privateers, basically. Yeah. And then they populate the crew of this ship.
I think we had brought up the idea of the robots getting out of control. instead of just being this general nuisance along the coast. And I think it makes sense considering what we've set up, where they're basically like a swarm, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just like a combination of insect intelligence and like human programmed intelligence.
What I was thinking was maybe they could have insect like instincts that are not necessarily privateer instincts that make them a nuisance. Like they're crawling on the underside of your ship. In the gutters, like in these shanty towns, you'll just find them coalescing around each other, like in weird patterns.
Belvin brought up the idea of like that these are almost like a programmed insectoid species, and I think that's interesting that like the letter of mark is almost like a punch card of commands for these like beetle swarm privateers.
That is a cool image.
Oh, and we don't really know where the rest of this brain comes from, right? The rest of this consciousness, because the beetles themselves don't behave like pirates, right? It's not totally clear how the beetle is using this information. Like there doesn't seem to be a direct connection. They just are following these ancient instructions that they've found.
Well, one thing that might be interesting, let me know if this is too far, but if the combination of beetle intelligence and human intelligence comes from like finding a dead man.
You put the beetle in a dead man's head. Oh.
Yeah.
So when they take over a ship, they put a beetle in everyone's head and it starts driving them around like a ratatouille.
You take the brain and put it in the robot body or something.
Yeah.
So like all these automatons are a combo of dead person brain and beetle intelligence.
Okay,
Love it.
interesting.
Love it.
And you would find beetles not just on ships, but in gutters as well, correct? Like in dirty areas of the cities, you could.
I think the
potentially
beetles would like
them.
originally be from like an island or something, and then they'd be commercialized or like weaponized, or what Dan was describing with having like a kid. So I don't think the beetles would just be like around, but the robots, there would be like some robots acting in like weird combo beetle human ways for sure.
In the cities, right? These are essentially like nobody knows what to do with these creatures if they're not being overtly violent, like they would be if they're often privateering. When they find their way into cities, like a beetle gets into like a corpse maybe and reanimates it, that would be pretty good.
Well, sort of the vibe or the aesthetic I'm getting for this, as far as the Ironclads go, is less Mississippi and more like Amazonas, like a Brazilian, like a network of like favela towns because bugs do great in these environments, right? So these like ghettos basically are prime breeding grounds for, this could be a setting, frankly, where bugs have like magical powers imbued in them.
Okay.
Because there could be like mosquitoes that operate in a similar sort of way, basically drain people dry.
Could we make the robots aesthetically, maybe humanity design-wise kind of leans into, they're humanoids, but they have like bug-like motifs and carvings because we know what powers them.
Sure, and there could also be like an Egyptian flavor.
Oh, yeah, because there's the hint of that ancient society that discovered the bugs could be used this way.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of the design, right? Because a lot of the design for these robots, at least the originals that were made, and then subsequently just because of, it's inheritance, sort of. Like, not inheritance by, like, genetics, but inheritance by, like, oh, this is what the person who created me looks like, or this is what I look like. I'm going to make this thing in my image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
They're going to have Egyptian, like, patterns and motifs.
I'm imagining, like, Chidness. I mean, honestly, like C-3PO, but with more, like, scale-y kind of...
Yeah, it's like armored plates that are like resiny over muscly, like fibrous tissue.
Yeah,
that's maybe exposed.
And the face is less human than you would think it would be.
It could be that they like grow mandibles and like kind of like covers over the eyes. How like some bugs have, like you get like that black, like very gross.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. And mixed with kind of like a well, it doesn't have to be a pirate aesthetic, but mixed with a pirate aesthetic, that could look cool as well.
Yeah, what could be interesting is just if there's kind of both variations, like ones that are a little more insect-like and ones that end up just being a little closer to human intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So they could like function in the world. They have like they are inheritors of a human brain in a way. So like there's Captain John Mark, but he's just like a insecty looking gold man.
Do they speak?
Maybe some do, and they can certainly speak with each other.
Yeah.
And like beetle swarm kind of.
That would be one of the reasons a lot of people would distrust them also, is like if they have a hard time speaking to humans but can speak amongst themselves like pretty freely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, beetles, they communicate through like rubbing their like legs on their thoraxes and like they're buzzing their wings at different frequencies and things like that. So it's not like speech typically.
Because of the way that these beetles are integrated into another body, they're like, they can't rub their legs together.
Yeah, and maybe they just like vibrate their whole body at certain frequencies, because if you're an automaton, you might be able to do that, right?
Yeah, maybe.
It's like if an iPhone can do it. So like a lot of their communication could just be them like vibrating and clanking together in certain ways. Then when they speak, it's all vibrating and clanky. What were we going to say, Chessman?
I was looking up Egyptian gods. There is an Egyptian god that is like a frog with like a beetle on top of it.
I don't know that one.
What?
Cool.
Cool.
I don't know if we want to go into frogs. That's a little.
Cool.
That's a little.
Next. Well, you're the lad, so actually you get to pick.
Yeah, well, I Dan brought up the idea of like different insect intelligences, and I like the basic idea of so in this tropic land that the privateers and glory seekers have gotten into, the insects can be combined with certain maybe ancient robot technologies. I think it's kind of interesting. There's not like an artificer who made these things, but like they opened up a tomb and they found these bodies and they can replicate them.
Yeah.
And so the beetles are the ones that are mass produced and like self-reproducing at a certain point and like become the pirates of the setting. But I think like mosquitoes, dragonflies,
mantises,
like those could like there are tombs just waiting for the compatible body types, right?
It could have been a society that placed a great deal of religious importance on insects as like creatures of power.
Where does Gutter come in?
Well, Gutter to me makes me think of the outcast status of the insect robots, of the beetles.
Yeah.
Well, they're like tools, basically, right? They're like tools of war that are being repurposed and thrown away when it's not convenient anymore.
Yeah.
And they don't like that.
Yeah. So maybe there's like an insectoid that because that ties a little bit into what we were talking about before about like the Freebooter Republic. There could be like a clandestine alliance of these weaponized insectoid robots. They're basically working for independence.
That is probably the scariest combination of words. Clandestine alliance of weaponized insectoid robots.
Yeah, it's the anime that I'm pitching to Sunrise next week. But keep
one
on the
phrase
down
to fucking rule them all. Jesus. All right, that
my
is
weaponized
scary.
combat robot insects can't be this cute.
So let's see. I think there would be Tomb Raider types who are trying to, like maybe in the tomb where they found the technology to be able to make the beetle robots, they found a reference to mosquito tomb, to dragonfly tomb, and there's sort of like a race to find those as well.
Well, there would be also like dead precursor robots littered all over, right?
Right, but if they're locked in the tomb, they don't. It's a little bit like Fallout, right? Where you've got these vaults of robots that are locked away, and it ends up being a sort of social experiment because these robots are intelligent. So, like, if there are robots down there that are, that were cognizant when they got locked away, it's entirely possible that they did some shit. And if they're still around, they probably aren't still around because they got locked away so long ago.
Is the life cycle of these robots tied in any way to the insects placed inside them? Do the insects die when they're placed inside? Infused?
Maybe the insects like it because it prolongs their life cycle too.
Yeah,
like
I like that.
To the insects, there's not a lot of benefit to living like this, right? Because all your instincts are now, you have a new body to fucking deal with. But that could be the draw, is that it prolongs your life. And the insects realize this too. They have to on some level. And this is kind of a necessary, they see it as a necessary step for them, and they don't necessarily want to go to the gutter, right? Let's talk about kind of specific societies that would exist here in this setting, because it is quite a curious one that we've woven here.
Could it, instead of it being a humanoid or like a human species that has like come to this land and discovered these bugs, could it be like a reptilian or like a lizard folk kind of deal, and they don't respect kind of the power of the insects as they're like a food source for them, and it's like they're willing to be kind of more reckless with them? Yeah.
Be good.
There's a weird racial dynamic there.
Oh, so then if we think about what the gutter would mean for these reptilians, these beetles are a food source for them, right? So they will literally like eat them, and their like shells will be littering the gutter. Amongst probably living beetles, who have mixed in. That always happens, right? There's always
you hide among the like fallen or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have lizard men who stumbled upon a way to fucking make pirate robots powered by a bug as a central nervous system.
It makes sense to me.
It's a pretty weighty concept, but I'm going to say the lore lad has signed off, and we are in the clear to go with that.
It is reminding me. I'm having to hold back a little bit because it is reminding me so much of Stargate. Just this concept of
I haven't seen Stargate, but this is the second setting
neither.
where you've been like, this is just like Stargate.
Well, because I've been watching Stargate.
Yeah, you've been trying to get people into it.
It's in Stargate. There was this concept of the Goa'uld.
Cut his mic.
Which
Get
is
him out of there.
It's a parasite that
Cut his mic.
burrows into like the back of the neck or a different part of the body,
into my patience,
and then links itself to the spinal cord, and like becomes a part of of another creature.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Can these things do that?
I don't think so.
No, I think
I don't think
we're
so
spending
either.
too much time on the bugs as well, because they're not the main characters of the setting. They're a big part of it.
Oh, they definitely are the main characters.
I
think they are.
We've added a ton of different things they can do, and we need to kind of step back, I feel like, and talk about how they impact society, as opposed to just shit that they do.
Well, we've talked about that some. We've talked about how that there were like privateer companies, and a lot of the robots, you like have a punch card essentially to choose whether they're Dutch, Spanish, English.
Yeah.
Right.
Or rather they're XPs.
And now essentially there's no like all of the wars, all of the naval warfare is being fought by these bugs.
Yeah, and there could also be maybe a transition point where a critical mass of the insect robots have sort of broken off and become pirates, become nuisances, become like the swarm.
And they have their own country, perhaps, or nation, or something analogous.
Yeah, they have like a hive port, the hive.
Yeah, a place you don't go if you're like a lizard, a normal God-fearing lizard man.
The lizard men originally conceived of these as being just subservient.
I don't know why it's bothering me that they're all the like privateer guys are lizard men.
It's because it's bothering you because we've gone too far off the deep end. Is what?
It's because I can't look at myself in this set. Well, could there just be like a faction of lizard men? Dan, why'd you want lizard men?
He always wants lizard men. Every nation builder, he's
one nation builder. No, because I think that the dynamic of like this is a dangerous weapon that they're more inclined to play recklessly with because of their like dietary restrictions was basically where the idea came from, or because of their dietary preferences.
Yeah, they don't respect them.
And also, we do humans
don't respect bugs either.
Yeah, no, we hate them.
Yeah, but when you hate bugs and fear them as opposed to looking at them as purely expendable, I think you're less likely to create a weaponized race of them.
I think humans look down at bugs as well.
All I'm saying, listeners, go back and listen to the Concrete Golem episode, and because we had Lizardmen in that, and if Daniel was one who brought them up, I will take the check made out to me. You can make it out to me.
Oh.
And yeah, I would like some sort of remittance for being right about that, if it comes to pass. If not, then I never said it.
It's impossible for you to make money off of this podcast. It will not happen.
God,
you still haven't got it. Yeah, go ahead.
What if there's a faction of Lizardmen? Like, what if one of the kingdoms involved?
I think this is something the lore lad would speak on.
It's all Lizardmen. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's all lizards.
I'm sorry, it's all Lizardmen. And so now, at this moment, what I'm going to ask of all of you is, what does a lizard society look like? Like, what is a lizard? Like a sort of maybe Victorian era society.
He has the authority.
Well, they would go to the tropics because there's more sun there.
That's true.
I think the architecture would be very like open and like let a lot of light in, even on like ships and stuff, as opposed to trying to stay out of the sun, which like our human sailors do.
Right, and a relatively modern invention, which would be a creation of heat inside. Not relatively modern. I mean, they had fire, but they would congregate around sources of heat whenever they didn't have light available.
Yeah, lizards do always be doing that.
Right, I guess bugs are pretty opposed to fire in general, so that's an interesting dichotomy as well. Like, well, maybe lizardmen have lots of like torches and pyres and stuff because they like the heat. And the insectoid robots are always uncomfortable around them.
Well, there could be like sun barges that rich lizards go on where they like the feeling of being at sea, but also sunning. And it's just like a big ass open thing.
I think they'd be a very, by nature, industrious people. They would deforest the land to get fuel. They would dig coal mines and stuff like that to like keep themselves warm. There's like this chase of heat that they have to go through as a society.
I think of lizards, and I think of lizards as like the laziest pieces of shit of all the animal kingdom.
Well, that's the thing is, the appetites of the wealthy are served by the have-nots, right? Mm-hmm. So what the wealthy lizards want is they want to be lazy, and therefore the have-nots of the lizards toil. And it's probably terrible for them.
So it's a very stratified society, even more so than a human society would be.
Maybe they have siestas. You know, maybe they have siestas. Maybe it's not so bad. They get siestas,
but that's it. And it's hell, but also they get one thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, when it's in the middle of the day, like, it's probably when they have the most energy, but it's also when I'm sure lizards could stroke out.
There could be a lot of variance in terms of like the size of the lizard folk. I mean, it could be like very predatory kind of like alligator crocodile types sit at sort of the top of the social strata.
I do like too, because with lizards come like unusual dietary habits, like cannibalism and shit. So like if you're wealthy, you can literally buy another like human being to eat. Like just grow large. Like the wealthiest lizards are like these giant corpulent monsters, like crocodile-sized beings.
I would love to see that guy just sitting on a ship, the big fat lizard. Sorry, go ahead.
There could be lots of aggro lizards, like especially if they've been in the sun all day. They're all hyped up on energy, and that's where a lot of like the naval warfare comes from. Is they're just like pretty eager to fight.
They're conflict
comes easy to them. Mm-hmm. And they're a little less empathetic and afraid of hurting things because they have lizard brain.
And rocks would be very valuable because you got to have a nice rock to sun yourself
That's
on.
That's your currency.
Yeah.
Giant rocks.
You have marble plinths on your ship to sun yourself on.
The ancients built giant rocks that dot mega structure rocks.
Oh my god.
I love the Neolithic.
That's a joke, but what if the lizards think that there were these giant rocks that were like smoothed out and made just perfect for lizard folk
conquests,
perfect for like sunning yourselves? So they thought these were like the rocks of ancient like lizard ancestors. But the truth is that these are like giant like capstones to like tomb cities or something like that.
Okay, I like that.
Has nothing to do with sunning yourself, which the lizards
don't understand. Well, weren't the ancients also lizards? If it's lizards all the way down, then wouldn't the ancients also have been lizards, or were they birds?
The ancients could have been anything. Ancients could have been spirit forms that wanted to make corporeal form a reality.
Well, you know what I think? I think the ancients were bugs. I think that this entire concept of the bug inhabiting the robot.
That does make the most sense. Yeah. They built mechs.
But no, how would they? I mean, the whole point of the bug robots is that having the robot form allows them to do things and be different things than the bugs normally are.
No. But they could have, because there's all sorts of in sci-fi, like a
bug can't build a body.
No. There's all sorts of in like sci-fi, like a weak race overcomes its limitations by like fucking building its own insane like exoskeleton. And becomes like a really strong, burly phenotype. Like that can happen in fiction and like be plausible. So they could have found some way.
I feel like we set up the bugs as just like physically bugs, not bug folk, not bug people, but like physically bugs, which would preclude them having the hands to be able to craft things.
Yeah, they don't have
originally
hands.
The lizards served bugs. In the ancient times, the lizards were the idiot slaves who.
Yes, exactly.
What's the lore lad think?
Yeah,
what's
this
the
is
lore
to be
lad
adjudicated. That's absolutely it.
Oh,
that's
God.
it. No, see the bugs were actually bigger than lizards.
Well, no, that's actually like you could make an argument. Prehistoric bugs were like bigger bug men type, but then as they were devolving. And like their race was like degenerating over time. They were like, we need fucking ancient ass Hyrule technology to fucking keep ourselves looking cool. And so they came up with the exoskeletons, basically. Meanwhile, lizards are getting fucking. Their growth is not changing, right? And so they kind of like bugs devolved from ancient prehistoric bugs that may have been like huge and like worshipped by the lizards as gods.
There was an event that sort of a lot like the Great Ice Age when a meteor hit and killed off all the dinosaurs because they were too big to like hide from it. Essentially, that's the going theory.
Well, they needed so much food that when food dropped, their giant bodies could not sustain themselves and they all died.
That sort of happened to this ancient civilization.
Well, oxygen levels are a big reason. Like the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere versus oxygen is a big reason why we used to have like giant insects.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, anything that would cause a drop in CO2 levels or whatever gas equivalent in this world. Would just change.
The tomb cities where these smaller bug-like are automatons or creatures that could be used to make the automatons were found could have been built by the previously larger insects.
Yeah, that's a thing too.
Like during the fall of their civilization.
They would have had to have been physically imposing at one point to enslave lizards, right? But now...
Yeah, there's like giant statues of mantises like that have been destroyed all over the
lizards
place.
Destroy because they inspire the bug robots.
This is great. I'm loving this.
This is good. I like it as a chain of islands more than a continent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Why have continents? Well, you could just have your entire setting.
Thank you.
Just be like a string of islands, like along the tropic, sort of.
Like Macau, yeah.
Yeah, like Macau.
Beautiful Macau. What's the matter, Dan?
Beautiful Portuguese Macau. Yes. We have restrained ourselves from ocean settings for at least 5 episodes.
Yeah, we're good.
We're basically clean at this point.
We can do One Piece.
I swear, I just one, and I'll go back to making a Fraser pill.
Oh no! It was 4 episodes. Was the Will guest episode with the whales?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
listen, don't draw their attention to it, and we'll be fine.
Let's just talk about the whales from now on.
No,
the whales look like in this
I'm the lore lad. I say what I say goes.
Oh shit!
No, okay. We'll Well, where do we go? Because so we've got the bugs, we have the lizards, the reptiles, we have their cities, and we have the sort of the conflicts happening in the water, and we have their ships. Oh, we actually haven't talked much about the ships yet.
We haven't at all.
I think it makes sense.
They're big. They're ironclad.
Right. Well, someone said earlier we were talking about the ships that the lizards would have, and the lizards would have very open to the sun ships.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The bugs, on the other hand, if a ship was made specifically for bugs, it would be the opposite. It would be very cloistered, very low, kind of like an Ironside is sort of low on the water. You can't really shoot a cannon at it. It just sort of bounces off.
It literally, yeah.
What I've been envisioning for the lizard ships is that, like, they are for the purpose, like on a normal ship, you are working in the sun during the day, and then at night you go under the deck to sleep. But I feel like on these ships, you would have, like, you need to have a big open space on the top deck where you can sun yourselves, basically to amass energy from the sun. And there'd be more of working, like, below decks to maintain the cannons and everything. And the insects would, like you said, be the opposite of that, basically. Yeah. They prefer to be in the dark, and it needs to be, like, danker and stuff like that.
Like, they wouldn't...
Yeah. The dark at all times. And, like, the only times that they would actually be totally fine being above decks at night, if they have an above deck, which would be great for navigating by the stars, I guess.
Could be that they take, like, the sunning decks and reassemble them into, like, either just completely scrap them to reduce the weight of the vessel, or, like, reassemble them as, like, fortifications, basically. Like extra armor instead of these, like, awkward, like, resting platforms that sit on top of the ships, which kind of makes them vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting idea, that they're essentially, they do have to take a ship and cannibalize it and turn it into a different ship.
That is kind of
definitely, it's like everything that's facing out and sort of like open, sort of like a flower, gets sort of torn apart and turned inward. So it's a more aerodynamic ship. Like, it's harder to it's harder to hit. It's like it turns into a shell more than like what it was.
Are these ships, so we talk about Ironclad, so we can say that they're not made of wood, but maybe they're made of like a lightweight, buoyant metal?
Well, you don't need to be made of buoyant metal to be an Ironclad.
Right.
Because it's just engines that push your ass forward.
But Ironclads require engine, like combustion.
Right.
But if an Ironclad is lightweight, or it's made of metal like aluminum, then it wouldn't... The whole point of covering it in metal is that it's heavy metal that bounces off cannons and shit, right?
If there's not really a wood equivalent, then... or if the wood is scarce, then...
Well, it's interesting. Aircraft are made of concrete, right? Like, they're essentially, they're concrete ships. Like, you wouldn't think that concrete would float, but because it's just the shell of the ship, essentially, and it's got air inside of it, and it's buoyant. So it could kind of be made out of anything. Like, it could be made out of, like, rock, or perhaps these bugs would, like, chew up something and secrete it into to like a sort of form the hull of the ship.
Oh, it could be chitin ironclads. Yeah.
Oh man. And that's a good visual, I think, for us to fucking, because we got to start wrapping it.
Oh yeah.
Shit. Chessman, any last word on this setting where bug robots who have degenerated from a great bug civilization now serve shiftless fat ass lizards as pirates?
The rocks are crabs.
The rocks are crabs.
He's done
it's like
it.
Apollo 13.
You can subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice to get more choice last-minute words like the rocks are crabs. Visit us next week. We're going to be following up the Mendicant Gate with a special revisit episode. It's going to be extra long. We're going to talk all about Mormonism. We're going to do great disservice to whatever Native American cultures originally inhabited.
No, we're not. I'm going to fight very hard to make sure it doesn't happen.
There's going to be lots of disclaimers. I'm going to do a lot of editing.
Well, Belvin's going to lobby, but I'm not sure what we can get through in such a short session.
Yeah, we don't support lobbyists on this podcast.
Yeah, kind of problematic of you, Belvin.
Being anti-racist lobby.
Unless you want to advance pro-world building legislation, then we do support your lobby.
Our art is courtesy of the talented and wonderful Shell Tor at Jovial Paradox on Twitter. You can tweet at us too at LoreLads or send us spirited hate mail at 30minuteworlds@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy world building.